My name is Jameson. Just Jameson. Once upon a time, this name sounded proud and dignified, spoken with respect, but now it appears only on envelopes with bills or in short, dry messages from the bank. I live in an old wooden house on the outskirts of a small town, where the wind is familiar with every nail in the wall and the rain with every crack in the windowsill. Here, amid the silence and the gentle ticking of the clock, my days pass. Some would say it's peaceful. But no, it's not peaceful here, it's empty, reminding me every day that I'm no longer needed. I have 2 children, Anna and Michael. Anna is a career woman, always busy, always with a serious face that seems to have forgotten how to smile sincerely. Michael is my son, once such an inquisitive and sincere boy, and now he's just tired. Tired of everything, life, problems, me. I also have grandchildren. Young, beautiful, talented. They come to me every few weeks, most often just to take something, money, old things, help with some task. I don't refuse. But inside, something broke a long time ago. I have learned to distinguish between different kinds of silence. There is the silence of the night, it is cozy, soft, like a woolen blanket. And there is the silence of the day, prickly, empty, pressing on the chest. My silence is just like that. No one calls. Sometimes I call myself, and I hear in my children's voices what I feared most, impatience. If I were a real burden, difficult to bear, would leave on my own. But I am not a burden. I am just old. And that, as it turns out, is the scariest thing. Last week, I went to the store. I greeted the saleswoman, but she probably didn't hear me. Or maybe she did hear me but just ignored me. I stood in front of her, holding 2 loaves of bread and a pack of tea, and felt like a homeless person. People walked past me as if I were invisible. Young guys laughed loudly, a woman bumped into my cart and didn't even apologize. And it wasn't the first time. I became invisible. No, not because I hid myself, but because no one pays attention to me anymore. Because of the gray hair, because of my slow gait, because of my hands that tremble when I count change. I come home, put the groceries on the table, and just sit there. I don't eat right away, I wait for that strange weight on my shoulders to pass. I look at the photo of Helen, my late wife. She was my light. My background. My voice in the darkness. With her passing, silence began, at first quiet and mournful, and then deafening. As if the world had stopped responding. My children are not angry. I know that. They are just busy. Their lives, their rhythm, their worries, everything has spun them into such a whirlwind that there is no room left for me. It is easier for them to think that I am fine. That I still have strength. That I don't need anything. Only sometimes, when I am silent on the phone for too long, they ask, "Are you offended?" But I am not offended. I am tired. Sometimes I try to do something, tidy up the garden, repair an old bench, fix the electricity. But my hands are not what they used to be. My eyes get tired. And most importantly, no one notices. And that hurts the most. Because when you do something, you want it to mean something. You want someone to see it and say, "Thank you." But I haven't heard those words in a long time. Once, I accidentally overheard Michael talking to his wife about me. He's old now. What can you expect from him? And it felt like I was standing not in the hallway, but on a cliff. That my own son, the one I once carried in my arms, told fairy tales to, taught to keep his word, now sees only my age. Not a person. Not a father. Just an old man. And here I am. Sitting in my old chair with a cup of tea that has long since gone cold, thinking, how did it happen that I, a person with a history, with experience, with sacrifices behind me, became useless to anyone? Why does everyone think that old age is the end, not a continuation? Why, in a society that once respected gray hair, is it now a symbol of weakness? I don't want to feel sorry for myself. No. I can still walk, I can still think, I can still talk. But it hurts me how people treat me. Like furniture, like an old TV that still works but no one cares about anymore. And that's the loneliest thing. Not that there's no one to hug you, but that no one sees you. When I close my eyes, I see myself as I am not now. Not hunched over, not silent, not old. I see myself young, with a straight back, a confident gaze, hands that can lift heavy things and create something out of nothing. I see myself in uniform, still a young man, fresh out of school, who went to serve because he believed it was the right thing to do. And it was indeed the right thing to do. I have never regretted those years. In the army, I learned the most important things: to keep my word, to stand up for my people, to remain silent when it hurts, and to move forward even when I am afraid. I was a good soldier. Not a hero, just a man who did his job to the end. After my service, I returned to my hometown. Its roads were the same as when I was a boy riding my bike on them. But I was no longer a boy. I was a man. And I had a dream, to create something of my own. Not wealth, not fame, but a business that would outlive me. I started small, a small workshop in my father's garage. At first, I repaired chairs for my neighbors, then I took on cabinets, tables, and beds. People started coming to me because they saw that I didn't cut corners. I worked with my hands and my heart. That's how I built my business. It wasn't big, but it was honest. It was a business where every product had a soul. I remember when I first received a real order from a school to make desks for them. 30 desks. I worked day and night, putting care into every wooden plank as if it were for my own children. And when I saw those desks in the classroom, I couldn't hold back my tears. Because it was mine. Not money. Not papers. But a mark. And then Helen came into my life. She came to the workshop to order a shelf. And I gave her my heart. She wasn't just beautiful, she was strong. She had eyes that were both bright and calm. We lived together for 25 years. It wasn't always easy, but it was always honest. She gave birth to Anna and Michael. And we were a family. A real one. With loud laughter in the kitchen, the smell of pies, evenings when I read fairy tales to the children while Helen knitted. When she died. From that day on, my world cracked. She left suddenly, leaving me not only with a house and children, but with a whole abyss of silence. I didn't cry in front of the children. I had to be strong. Because who else but me? I worked even harder. I got up earlier and went to bed later. I learned to braid Anna's hair and make Michael's eggs. I learned to be a father and mother at the same time. I remember when Michael got into his first fight at school. He came home with red eyes and said, "They laughed at me because I don't have a mom." I didn't make a scene. I sat down next to him and said, "Son, we can't change the fact that she left. But we can change who we become after that." And he remembered. I taught him to be strong, but not cruel. I raised them both to be respectful. And I thought that's how it would be. I was a person people turned to. Neighbors asked me for advice, the city invited me to veterans meetings, schoolchildren came to me to hear me talk about life. I wasn't nobody. I was part of something. And when I spoke, people listened to me. I didn't need fame. Just the understanding that my word mattered. That I was someone, not just a name on a document. I remember giving everything I had when my children went to university. I sold part of my workshop and mortgaged my house. But I had no regrets. Because it was for them. So that they could have a better life. I wrote down who owed what and how much, not because I wanted to control them, but so that they wouldn't have debts. I wanted to give them freedom. And I did. And for myself, I kept my memories. And now I wonder where it all went. Where are the people who listened to my stories? Where are the eyes that looked at me with respect? Now I talk to the walls, not to an audience. Sometimes I catch myself telling the story to myself. And I listen to it, over and over again. Because there is no one else. When I see how children forget who I was, not out of malice, but simply out of indifference, it hurts me. Because I remember every step they took. I remember how Anna was afraid of thunderstorms and Michael couldn't fall asleep without my hand. And now they don't know when my birthday is. They say, "Sorry, we're busy." And I remain silent. Not because it doesn't hurt. But because I don't want to impose myself on them. But at night, when the house is asleep, I open old photos. And my heart aches. I don't ask for much. I don't ask for respect, toasts, gifts. I ask for only one thing, memory. Because without it, I become not a person, but a fragment. And I was whole. And I still am. Only no one sees it anymore. The last few years have been a challenge for me, not physically or materially, but morally. Yes, my body is not what it used to be. My knees crack, my back hurts, my heart beats faster for no reason. But that's tolerable. It's age. But the real pain is not in my joints or my heart. It's in the way people look at you. Or don't look at you at all. It started with little things. Anna and I used to talk every day, briefly, to the point, but sincerely. Now it's maybe once a week, if I call her myself. And there's always something in her voice that makes me feel like I'm in the way. Like it's not the right time. "Dad, I can't talk right now, I'll call you back," and she doesn't call back. And when I dare to say something important, she either changes the subject or just falls silent. As if to say, the old man is being dramatic again. With Michael, it's a little different. He was always reserved, not very emotional, but as a child he at least showed that I was important to him. Now, dryness. Coldness. Once I heard him say to his wife, "Leave him alone, he won't understand anything anyway." That's about me. About the person who raised him instead of his mother. I was standing in the hallway with a newspaper in my hands and couldn't take a step. I felt so ashamed, not for him, but for myself. That I had lived to see the moment when my thoughts became worthless. And my grandchildren. God, my grandchildren. I waited so long for them to arrive. I dreamed of telling them fairy tales, teaching them crafts, taking them fishing. But it turned out they didn't need any of that. They come with their phones in their hands, show each other something, laugh, and pay no attention to me. Once, one of them said to her friend on a video call, "This is my grandfather, he has an interior from the last century." I smiled then, as if nothing had happened. But inside, I withered. Doctors are a separate story. I've been going to the same clinic for 30 years. They used to know me there, greet me. But now, appointments are made through a terminal, there are 2-hour queues, and the doctor, a young man with an indifferent face, doesn't even look me in the eye. I say, "My back hurts, I haven't slept for several nights." And he says, "Well, you're old. What do you want?" And that's it. No tests, no sympathy. Just a short, "Next." And I leave, lowering my eyes, clutching the referral like a death sentence. But perhaps the most painful thing is the children's conversations behind my back. Once I overheard Anna saying to Michael on the phone, "We can't leave him alone, but taking him in is also difficult. He has his own character, you know." I didn't want to hear that. I don't deserve those words. I didn't drink, I didn't beat them, I didn't cheat on them. I was everything to them. And now, difficult. These moments are like nails, one after another, being driven into my soul. And I, who was once a proud man who kept a home, children, and a business, have become a shadow, a silent figure in a chair that everyone avoids. It was a normal day. I went into town to pay my utility bills. The weather seemed fine, but something in the air felt off. A kind of uneasy feeling, you know? I walked to the bank, stood in line, my legs aching, because, as always, there were no chairs, nothing. I stood silently, like everyone else. And finally, my number appeared on the board. I approached the window. A young girl, 20 years old, maybe a little older. She didn't say hello. She looked at me as if I was about to waste her time on some nonsense. I handed her the papers, she didn't even look at them. She said, "Old bills. Go over there, sort it out first, then come back. Next." And just turned away. I stood there for a few seconds, not understanding what had happened. The people behind me began to murmur. Someone even nudged me lightly on the shoulder, as if to say, "Move along." And at that moment, in my head, in my chest, in my eyes, everything became foggy. No, not from offense. From anger. Deep, hot anger that I hadn't felt since my youth. Not because she was rude. But because it had become the norm. That this is how the whole world sees me. I didn't move. I stood there. And suddenly, my voice, quiet but clear, sober. "You don't even know who I am. And you don't care. But I was the one who built this neighborhood. I stood in the rain, taking measurements, when you weren't even born yet. I paid taxes when your parents were still running around with briefcases. And I'm not asking for privileges. I'm asking for only one thing, respect." People fell silent. The girl pretended not to hear. But the silence in the room became so thick that you could cut it with a finger. I turned around and left. Slowly. But inside me, there was no longer an old man awkwardly apologizing for his existence. Something inside me clicked, broke. Experience, memory, strength, everything I once had suddenly returned. Not physically, but in character. I walked down the street and saw passers-by avoiding me as they always did. But this time I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. In the sense that I would no longer allow myself to be trampled on. I will not remain silent, I will not allow arrogance. I am not angry, I am determined. I returned home and sat in the dark for a long time. And I realized, either I will fade away, quietly, unnoticed, without any resistance, or I will get myself back. Not for them. For myself. And I chose to fight. After that day, after I left the bank with a bitter taste in my mouth but clarity in my head, I sat down in my chair, where I usually spent my evenings in silence, and didn't turn on the light. I sat in the dark and felt something growing inside me. Not anger. Something else. I would call it memory. Sharp, cutting, like a blade. I remembered everything, every day when I was silent, when I swallowed humiliation, when I apologized even though I had done nothing wrong. And it became clear to me, enough. I opened an old drawer in my desk. There was a notebook there. Small, with a leather cover, from the days when I was in business. I kept records, took notes, recorded debts, other people's and my own. I leafed through the pages, touched the yellowed paper, and remembered who I was. And I decided, I would start a new chapter. I called it, The Return. Not revenge. No. I don't want to ruin other people's lives. But I will make them see me. I am still here. And I have a right to respect. The next morning, I called an old friend, George. We served together, then crossed paths on business, but hadn't spoken in a long time. He was surprised to hear my voice. We met at a coffee shop. He was also having a hard time, age, loneliness, oblivion. But when I told him what I had in mind, his eyes lit up. I'm with you, he said. We started simple, we wrote an open letter to the local newspaper. No accusations. Just a story, about us, about the people who built this city, who raised it after storms, about how we became invisible. The letter was published under the headline, "The Voice of the Old City." And, to my surprise, it resonated. I was invited for an interview. I went. And I told the truth. Without aggression. But with dignity. Then I called Anna. I said, I need to talk. Not as a father. As a person. She came, reserved, businesslike. I showed her my notebook. I showed her how many times I had helped, kept silent, understood. I said, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I want you to remember who I am. And for the first time in many years, I saw tears in her eyes. She hugged me. She said, I didn't know we had lost you while you were still around. I started walking around the city. I didn't hide. I talked to people. I told stories to young people. Some listened. Some laughed. But most stopped. And listened. Because when you speak with truth in your heart, people hear you. I didn't become a different person. I just returned to myself. Not a silent old man, but the man I had been all my life. I am experience. I am memory. And now people see that. And that is my victory. Now, when I sit on the same bench near my house, from which I once looked at the fallen roses and felt emptiness, I am no longer the person I was then. The world around me has not changed dramatically, people are still rushing somewhere, shops are noisy, children are staring at their screens. But I have changed. And that is enough. I have learned to respect myself again. Not for the past. But for not breaking down. Because old age is not about how many wrinkles you have on your face. It's about whether your heart is still alive. Whether the fire is still burning. My fire has not gone out. They tried to smother it with indifference, silence, contempt. But I am not a candle. I am a bonfire. And I am burning again. After I started speaking out loud, I was heard. And more importantly, I was seen. My children no longer call out of obligation. Now they want to talk. Anna comes over more often, for no reason, with pies that she never used to be able to bake, but now, for some reason, they taste better. Michael stayed overnight once and said, I want my son to get to know you better. And I realized, they were starting to remember who I was, and therefore who I am. My granddaughters? They started listening to my stories. They record them on their phones. They post them on TikTok. And, at first I was angry. But then I listened. And there, among the music and fast-paced footage, was my voice. Not mockery. But memory. And I thought, if the new world is like that, then let there be a place in it for an old man with a deep soul. I write in my notebook again. Not for revenge, for memory. For myself. Because sometimes, when it's quiet around you, only your own voice can remind you of who you were. And I write, today I made tea. I sat in the garden. And I heard the birds singing again. Because these are not trifles. This is life. And I have learned to see it again. Now I know that the main thing is not to let the world silence you. When they write you off, don't be silent. When they laugh at you, don't give up. When they forget, remind them. With dignity. Quietly. But firmly. And if I could address everyone who now feels like a shadow, as I once did, I would say. It's never too late to get yourself back. Don't worry that you've been written off, you're not finished yet. Your story continues as long as you write it. Don't be silent. Don't hide. You are alive. And that is already a victory.